Thomas Erickson spent 22 years designing skyscrapers for three of the world's largest structural engineering firms, buildings in Dubai, Shanghai, and New York. Last year, he was shown the specifications for NEOM's Chandelier building. He laughed. Then he realized they were serious. The design defied every principle he'd spent 2 decades mastering. The Chandelier is a proposed luxury hotel designed to hang upside down from a cliff face in the Trojena mountain zone, an inverted skyscraper suspended over a canyon, gravity-defying by design, physically impossible by every engineering standard that exists. No precedent anywhere in the world. No materials capable of supporting the design. No construction methodology that could assemble it safely. But here is what NEOM doesn't want you to know. Every independent structural analysis concluded the same thing. The design violates fundamental physics. In this video, I will expose the engineering assessments that declared the Chandelier impossible before a single bolt was drilled. I will reveal why NEOM proceeded despite unanimous expert opposition. And I will show you what happens when political ambition overrides the laws of physics. This week, sources within NEOM's architectural division confirmed construction planning continues despite multiple teams flagging the design as unviable. This isn't a debate about aesthetics or ambition. This is fundamental physics, and the physics clearly say no. The Chandelier requires anchoring a multi-story habitable structure to a natural cliff face and suspending it over a canyon. Engineering analyses identify at least 5 critical impossibilities. The first is anchor loading. Suspending a building from rock requires anchors supporting the entire dead load plus occupants, water systems, and mechanical equipment. The combined load exceeds anything ever attempted in cliff face engineering by a factor of approximately 15. Current rock anchor technology developed for bridges and dams maxes out at a small fraction of the requirement. No material advancement on any manufacturer's timeline closes this gap. The second impossibility is geological stability. The Trojena zone sits on sedimentary and metamorphic formations, untested for sustained megastructure loads. Desert rock faces experience thermal cycling. Daily swings of 30 to 40 degrees cause expansion and contraction that weakens anchor points over decades. One structural geologist who reviewed the site for a European consultancy described the conditions. The third impossibility is wind loading. A suspended structure experiences fundamentally different dynamics than a conventional building. Conventional buildings transfer wind loads downward through foundations into the earth. The Chandelier must transfer those same forces upward through anchor bolts already under maximum gravitational tension from the building's own weight. Wind oscillation in a suspended structure creates resonance that amplifies movement, the same principle that destroyed the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in 1940. The fourth impossibility is seismic vulnerability. Northwestern Saudi Arabia experiences moderate seismic activity from the Red Sea Rift system. A conventional building absorbs seismic forces through its foundation. A suspended building swings like a pendulum. Anchor points absorb forces they were never designed for. One seismic engineer who assessed the vulnerability for an international insurance underwriting firm delivered a verdict that effectively ended the insurance conversation. The fifth impossibility is life safety. Building codes require multiple emergency egress routes from every occupied floor. The Chandelier provides one access point at the top, where it meets the cliff. In a fire, every occupant evacuates upward through a single corridor. This violates every international fire safety standard. No insurance company has agreed to provide liability coverage. Without insurance, the building cannot legally operate as a hotel or residence under any recognized international code. Construction logistics present additional impossibilities. Building a suspended structure on a cliff requires crane access the Trojena terrain cannot provide. Heavy lift helicopters could transport some materials, but cannot position structural members weighing dozens of tons with required precision. The concrete sequence for an inverted structure defies standard methodology. Conventional buildings pour downward with gravity. The chandelier requires pouring against it. Worker safety on a cliff, suspended construction site presents challenges no existing protocol addresses. International construction safety organizations have no framework for this environment. Protocols would need to be invented from scratch. One fire safety engineer, who reviewed the plans for NEOM's own internal team, described the conversation. 2019. The chandelier included in Trojena's master plan. Renders generate global media attention. 2020. First feasibility studies commissioned. 3 independent firms submit assessments. All 3 identify fundamental structural concerns. 2021. Leadership reviews assessments. Instead of abandoning the concept, teams are instructed to revise the design. Engineers describe this as working backward from a predetermined conclusion. The answer was always yes. Their job was to make the math agree. 2022. Revised design submitted. Reviewers note cosmetic changes, but no resolution of structural impossibilities. 2023. Multiple senior structural engineers resigned from Trojena. Raising safety concerns about the chandelier was career-limiting. 2024. NEOM's 20% layoff hits Trojena division. Chandelier-specific roles eliminated. Project continues with reduced oversight. 2025. Despite zero resolution of 5 impossibilities, the chandelier remains in NEOM's active pipeline. Architects billing for a structure engineers say cannot stand. Hundreds of millions spent on architectural designs that fundamentally violate physics. Several factors explain why NEOM continues pursuing a design its own engineers declared impossible. First, the chandelier is Mies's personal signature within NEOM. Canceling requires telling the Crown Prince his vision violates physics. Second, the chandelier generates more media coverage per dollar than any other NEOM component. Dramatic renders shared millions of times globally. Third, admitting it is impossible raises questions about every other NEOM design. If this can't be built, what about the line's 500-meter walls? Fourth, sunk cost psychology is powerful. Years of design work and hundreds of millions in site preparation. Walking away means admitting total waste. Finally, the culture at NEOM punishes dissent. Engineers who raised structural concerns were sidelined, reassigned, or included in layoffs. The people qualified to say no were systematically removed. The people who remained learned not to ask. And the promotional videos kept playing. The chandelier has become a symbol of NEOM's dysfunction across every professional community that discusses mega projects. LinkedIn posts from structural engineers analyzing the impossibilities generated hundreds of thousands of professional interactions. Reddit engineering communities produce detailed load analyses proving the anchor system needs to be several times stronger than existing technology. YouTube channels specializing in structural engineering published breakdowns with millions of combined views. Architectural publications that initially praised the concept at announcement have since published detailed follow-up pieces questioning fundamental feasibility. The industry narrative shifted from visionary ambition to reckless disregard for engineering reality. Saudi authorities emphasize that NEOM employs world-class engineering talent from the finest firms globally. But those same world-class engineers are the very people raising the loudest alarms about the chandelier's impossibility. Major architecture firms credited with the chandelier design have not publicly defended its feasibility. Their silence speaks volumes. The chandelier isn't Trojena's only impossible component. The broader plan includes a ski resort where temperatures exceed 40 degrees for months. The entire Trojena mountain zone concept is under engineering scrutiny from independent analysts and former NEOM employees alike. The chandelier is simply the most dramatic and public example of a systemic problem affecting every Trojena component. The consequences of pursuing impossible engineering extend beyond NEOM's reputation. If built and occupied, the liability exposure is incalculable by any actuarial standard. A structural failure in a suspended building hanging over a canyon means casualties with absolutely zero possibility of evacuation from lower floors. Engineering firms that lend their names to the Chandelier face severe credibility consequences regardless of the project's outcome. Professional association with a structure unanimously declared impossible by the engineering community damages reputations that took decades to build. The broader NEOM credibility crisis deepens with every impossible design in the active pipeline. Competing Gulf states point to the Chandelier as evidence Saudi ambitions have detached from engineering reality entirely. Dubai built the Burj Khalifa by pushing boundaries within physics. Saudi Arabia is building beyond physics. The investment community sees the difference clearly. The Burj Khalifa cost $1.5 billion and attracts over 2 million visitors annually. The Chandelier's design budget alone consumed hundreds of millions with zero construction. The difference between ambitious and impossible is measurable. Engineers measured it. The Chandelier falls on the wrong side of physics. Every investor evaluating Saudi projects factors in the Chandelier precedent. If leadership approves impossible designs, what does that say about oversight everywhere else? What does NEOM know about internal assessments the public hasn't seen? Every review concluded unviable, yet planning continues without explanation. Acknowledging the impossibility requires an uncomfortable truth. The Chandelier was never an engineering proposal. It was a marketing asset. As a marketing render, it succeeded spectacularly. Millions of shares across social media platforms. Billions in perceived brand value for NEOM and Trojena. As actual engineering, it failed comprehensively before a single foundation bolt was even considered. To be fair, ambitious architecture often pushes boundaries. The Burj Khalifa required innovations that didn't exist at proposal. Sydney Opera House exceeded every budget. But those projects pushed boundaries within physics. The Chandelier doesn't push boundaries. It ignores them entirely. NEOM could redesign the project as a clifftop observation facility with cantilevered viewing platforms that preserves the dramatic mountain location and its tourism appeal while respecting the fundamental constraints of engineering reality. But a clifftop deck doesn't generate the same headlines as a gravity-defying inverted skyscraper. At NEOM, media coverage has consistently outweighed engineering truth. The window for honest reassessment closes with every dollar spent on site preparation for a structure that cannot safely exist. What happens when a government decides physics is optional? What happens when the people who understand science are silenced? Saudi Arabia commissioned the world's best engineers to evaluate the Chandelier. Every single one said it cannot be built safely. Then Saudi Arabia instructed them to find a way to make it work regardless. The engineers who refused were systematically removed from the project. The ones who stayed now face an impossible daily choice between professional integrity and continued employment at the kingdom's flagship project. Your understanding of engineering matters more than any promotional concept render produced by NEOM's marketing teams. Can political ambition override the fundamental laws of physics? The evidence is overwhelming. Tell us what you think in the comments. Subscribe if you want the real engineering truth hidden behind the marketing. The Chandelier is just one impossible design. Wait until you see the engineering analysis of what they are planning for the rest of Trojena.